Everything you ever wanted to know from a translation agency and more is going to be answered in today's video. Coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. Today I have a very special video in store for you. I'm going to have a chat with one of my agency clients. Maire from Supertext, a translation agency from Switzerland, is coming on the channel. He's their Chief Language Officer. And yeah, we're going to have a talk about what agencies look for in freelancers. They hopefully have some tips for you, how you can approach agencies, some do's and don'ts for freelancers. And I think it's going to be a very valuable chat. He's going to join us any second, so let's not waste any more time and cut to Lucas. So we are joined by Lucas. He is representing Supertext as their Chief Language Officer. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the channel today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just full disclosure for everyone, we have kind of a unique relationship, I would say. On the one hand, Lucas and I are very good friends. We studied together, but on the other hand, he's also working at one of my biggest clients. So this, of course, makes it possible to film a video like this, which can be very insightful for all the viewers out there. And first things first, Lucas, why don't you just tell a bit about yourself? What is it that you do, where you work, and yeah, who are you?
So I work for Supertext, as you already mentioned. Supertext is a big translation and copywriting agency based in Zurich, Switzerland, but we also have offices in LA and in Berlin. We have around 80 employees. We're specialized in mainly creative content, transcreations, but also in various other fields. So we have in-house project managers and we have in-house language managers, which is kind of different from how other agencies work. Our four main languages, so we have linguists in-house. So they are not necessarily translating the entire content, but they're here to quality check. We work with around 2,000 freelancers in all the main languages, so German, English, French, and Italian. And my personal background, so as Adrian already said, we studied together, so I have a bachelor's degree in translation. Then I moved a bit in a different direction. I did a master's degree in public relations and communications. I worked also as a freelance translator, copywriter. I was also teaching German. I was living abroad in France. I worked also as a political campaigner, and then I joined Supertext, and now I'm kind of back in the language industry.
Nice. Was it always kind of the plan to go full circle and come back to the language industry? No,
actually never. It's interesting because I did my master's degree to kind of get away from the language industry. I always loved languages. I mean, it's amazing because it opens doors. You can communicate with so many people then. But I kind of felt translating or working with languages, like language as a working tool, is not really my thing. Maybe I was not a really good translator. I was just more interested in like communicating with people and maybe doing something else, like more with communications. And now I kind of feel like it's actually a really good mix, like this job I have now. Like I'm still in the language industry, so I know the industry. I work with languages, like every day I speak different languages, which is amazing, but I don't do the linguistic work.
Yeah. Now you have the best of both worlds, basically. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I found, let's put it that way, I found like my spot, what I like.
And would you say your education as a translator helps you in your job now, or helped you to get this job in the first place?
Yes and no. Like, I mean, it's very helpful that I have worked as a translator and that I have a bachelor's degree in translation, because it gives me kind of the basics to understand how freelancers, like freelance translators, how they work, and also obviously to understand the industry. But then more for like the management aspect of my job, it doesn't help me at all, basically. Obviously, you need to know the industry. You can't just bring someone in to work in a translation agency without knowing the industry. So I guess it helps.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the introduction. I want to get as quickly as possible to the topics that everyone is here for, right? So yeah, like most of the viewers watching would be aspiring translators and or already established ones. Can you tell us about like how does a cooperation come about between a freelancer and Supertext? How does that work? Obviously, you can't hire all of us, unfortunately, but like, how can one imagine that this happens?
So usually freelancers, they apply to become part of our freelancer pool. They can apply on our website. And then also we recruit actively, depending on our current projects and our bigger clients. Obviously, not everyone can become a translator and working for us. We have specific criteria. For example, we are an ISO certified translation agency, so that means we must fulfill certain criteria, and therefore also the freelancers. For example, we can't work with someone who is very interested in languages but doesn't have a background in translation. So we either need someone who has done a translation degree, or someone who has another university degree and has worked for 2 years as a translator full-time, or someone who doesn't have a degree at all but has at least 5 years experience as a translator full-time. And then if someone applies, I mean, obviously we check the CV. We often do also a test in advance, and if the quality is fine, if the experience matches, if also the demand, like if we have the demand for this specific language combination, then we usually send out a contract.
Yeah, demand is a good keyword. I wanted to ask, are you constantly looking for new linguists, or only like when a specific project comes on, like a new client, and then you look for them? Or
I mean, kind of both. It really depends. At the moment, we kind of stopped just hiring passively as many people as we can. So we're more like recruiting on demand. For example, we just started a big collaboration with a new client. And then we had to look for new people who are specialized in this specific field. The problem is if we hire just everyone who has an interesting CV and who applied to become a freelancer at Supertext, yes, they might have a very interesting profile, they have very interesting language combinations, but we don't really have work for them. We'd rather just hire people we actually need, and then they also get work.
All right. Is it important for you that a translator has a certain, of course you mentioned the prerequisites from ISO, but when someone recommends you a translator, is this of value for you, or do you rather look at their experience or education? Can you tell us a bit something about these three aspects, how they relate to each other?
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, like the basic criteria, they need to be fulfilled. I mean, we get so many requests from freelancers, like we have so many applicants. If there is a recommendation, if someone, like if you tell me, hey, I have a really good friend who is a really good translator and who works in this and this special field that you're currently looking to recruit people in, then it really helps. Then I would definitely check out the profile. Freelancers always need to ask themselves, how can they stand out in the crowd, right? And obviously a recommendation is always good.
Yeah, that's really important. I tell this all the time in my videos, how important it is to have a network. But it's also a bit, you also have to be careful with asking for recommendations. I feel like, imagine you have to also have a relationship. This is more for the viewers now. Like if someone writes me and tells me, hey, can you recommend me to Lucas? That doesn't work, right? I need to be able to verify that you are good, otherwise it backfires on me. So just start early with building a network, and work with people, collaborate, so actually they can give you a good recommendation, not just an empty one, as I say.
Yeah, exactly. I also think this is very important. I mean, because you also kind of trust your network, right? So I would lose faith in someone in my network who would just constantly send me people who this person actually doesn't really know. So it has to be like a trusted relationship.
Cool. Do you have any tips that maybe would be useful for the viewers, how they can increase their chances to get hired by an agency when they apply?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of applicants who just enter very quickly. Like I can see that we're just one other agency they're applying for, and they don't really take the time to properly enter all the necessary information or to upload all the necessary documents. So it is very important that they take their time and that they write, like, it doesn't have to be a huge motivation, like cover letter, but we need to see that they put in some effort. We have, for example, for our agency, if you're a freelancer based in Europe, you need to have a proof that you are officially registered as a freelancer. And if someone doesn't even bother uploading these documents, or if someone just uploads a CV and that's it, and the CV is not even like, it doesn't look very professional, then the profile for me is incomplete, and I would just skip it, because there's so many other applicants who actually put in effort. So, I mean, a very good tip could also be like, your CV needs to be professional, like put in the most relevant information. It's like if you apply for a normal job, like the recruiter will only spend like 30 seconds on your CV. So you need to kind of highlight what is important, right? Like we have on our website, why do you want to work with us? And there you can kind of mention your unique selling point, right? Maybe you offer very specific service in a very specific field. So it's definitely worth mentioning that.
For sure, yeah. So you actually do check CVs then? Because there is kind of this perception in the industry almost that we are translators, we are service providers, we are no other than a dentist or a plumber or something, and they don't give you a CV, right? So why should we? But for you, it's actually important. So for you, it's more like an employee-employer relationship then, right?
Maybe a bit less, but I mean, we definitely have to check the CV because we also because of this ISO criteria. But I mean, it also gives you an overview of the person. Like, I think you mentioned this in one of the videos. It's like also having a website. Like having a website is very nice, but it doesn't, like, it shows that you're professional, and it's the same for the CV. Like it could be also a criteria to whether are we going to test this person with a live job, or are we going to do a test translation advanced based on what I see on this CV and based on the experience this person already has. I would test them like with a real job.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and on the other hand, we just spoke about good things. What about the bad things? Do you come across common mistakes that always happen again and again, and just filter the applicant out immediately? Spelling mistakes, I assume?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, spelling mistakes is definitely a no-go. But also, like, there are two things I'd like to mention. Like, just before the collaboration starts, like, we have also a lot of freelancers who what they do and what I think is very is very unprofessional. And they apply, then they contact someone, and then like the vendor management looks at their application and they reject the freelancer for whatever reason. Maybe we don't need currently these specific linguists, or maybe this person just doesn't fit our standards. Yeah. But then what some of these people do, I mean, obviously this is only a tiny fraction of people who do that, but then they would send an email maybe to me or maybe to someone else and say exactly the same thing again, apply again and again and again, like they don't accept to be rejected. And I just think this is not very professional. So this is a no-go. Like, try again like a year later, maybe then the situation has changed. And another thing, I think you mentioned this also in one of your videos, is like with freelancers we work with, I think accepting feedback is very important.
Yeah, like, how you accept it,
yeah. I think like this is not very common with our freelancers, but every now and then you have someone, and I personally find that like this is a huge no-go, that one of our language managers sends out the feedback and this person is just totally doesn't want to accept the feedback and justifies and says, oh no, but I think this is wrong, you're wrong, I'm a really good linguist, why would you even send me this feedback, I don't understand. And like, I mean, it's nothing personal. Everyone has a bad day, right? It can happen. Like, even the best translator might at some point send out a translation with a few mistakes that shouldn't have happened, and there is nothing personal about it, right? It's just a professional email.
This wouldn't mean that the person is kicked out, I assume, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, and I also personally, I really appreciate this about Supertext in general. The communication is excellent and it's always very personal. And I feel like that's also something you want to communicate. And I hear a lot of people complain that there are no good agencies out there anymore. But you know, what do you have to say to it? Obviously, hopefully something else. But how's your opinion about that?
But we try to add a personal touch to it. Like the communication is very important, feedback, also positive feedback, obviously, like the communication between the freelancers and the language managers should be casual, like informal, We also do a lot of events where we kind of try to build out relationships. Like just a few months ago, we did a freelancer convention where we talked about certain topics and where we tried to engage with the freelancers.
Do you have I'm curious, do you have some kind of perfect model freelancer in mind? Like, what would that be for you?
So agencies get a lot of translation requests that are like turnaround time is very short. So a perfect freelancer has to be like very reactive. So if you get a request from the agency, even if you reject it, it doesn't matter, but react as fast as possible, because then the project manager, or in our case, the language manager, can send the job to someone else. Then obviously punctuality, because there is a huge chain, like there's the freelancer, the language manager, then our internal project manager and the client. And I mean, obviously the linguistic background, right? I mean, being a good linguist is also very important. And one point that I forgot to mention, which is also very important, like that they work with a CAT tool, obviously, like the CAT tool that is required.
All right. My last question is kind of a very broad one, so maybe you can just sum it up in a few sentences. I also want to I'm planning a video for next year that kind of spans on this topic of the future of translation, but I want to speak to a lot of people to get this video right, because it's kind of an important topic in my opinion. How do you see it? Many futurists are kind of skeptical whether translation will still be needed and how it's shifting, translators becoming language professionals rather than translators.
I mean, I think the demand on translated content has never been higher, and the demand will go up as well. And what I think is important is that we are also open to new technologies, because this will make the translator job easier. It will never replace them. For example, neural machine translation. It will never replace a good translator, but I see it more like the future that translators, they need to embrace this new technology, use it to their advantage, and it will help them to become more efficient, right? So for certain text types, they use neural machine translation to be faster. And then, for example, for very creative content or very specialized content, for example, as I mentioned, Supertext is specialized in transcreations. I mean, a transcreation can never be done by a machine. So obviously we will always need very creative and specialized translators. The future of translation is bright. It's different, but it's still positive, and translators will always be needed. And I gave a speech a few months ago. You can also check it out on YouTube. It's about neural machine translation and how we approach this.
Nice. I will link it in the description so people can check it out. All right. Very nice final point, I would say. The future is bright. Lucas said it. Thanks so much for coming on. And for you viewers out there, Lucas is always very active in the comments. So if you have questions to him, to me about Supertext, just ask them. I'm sure he's open to answer them. And if there are other questions, we can always make a part 2 of this next year, or some kind of collaboration with Supertext. This has been very insightful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for having me. It was great. It was very interesting.
Cool. Make sure to subscribe, everyone. It helps out a lot. And I see you next week with another video. Bye-bye.